This season we had plenty of big names missing due to injury, you know, big time names. JJ Watt, we had Aaron Rodgers missing a bunch of time. And I thought, why not, as we approach the Super Bowl, take a look at a team made up entirely of players who spent a large majority of last season on injured reserve. And what I wanted to see is, would that team, according to Madden 18, win a Super Bowl or be capable of going to the Super Bowl? Now, of course, we're going to take a look at the team in a second. The reason I wanted to do this now is, of course, both the Patriots and the Eagles, the two Super Bowl teams, have been affected by injuries themselves in some pretty significant ways. Of course, maybe the biggest loss for the Patriots being Dante Hightower on the defense. And of course, the Eagles, no need to mention him, Carson Wentz. So now let's take a look at this all-injured reserve team. So at quarterback, we've gone with Aaron Rodgers. Now, there were plenty of good choices here. Andrew Luck, of course, spent the majority of season on injured reserve and was gone the entire season due to injury. Carson Wentz joined that group of injured reserve quarterbacks a little bit later. But Aaron Rodgers, I think, stands out here. Also, if my maths was correct, spent more time on injured reserve than everybody else. And I also want to say, why are we the New York Giants? Because the Giants have had more players on injured reserve this season than any other team, with 27. Well, let's move on to the running back position. Of course, it's gonna be David Johnson. One of the biggest losses this season was David Johnson. You know, he was headed for setting records with 100-yard scrimmage games before he got injured, and now we miss out on that. So now we move on to the fullback position. You may have seen someone else there we'll come back to later. John Kuhn at fullback. The wide receivers now with the Giants, so two of them were already here. We've gone with Allen Robinson. Our number one guy is, you know, that X receiver. Then we've got Odell Beckham Jr. as our, you know, Z receiver. And then in the slot, the perfect group of three pretty much here, I would say. Julian Edelman and Brandon Marshall, of course, already on the team anyway, can join us. And Dwayne Harris there. Three guys from the Giants, but all of them were on injured reserve. And it's kind of sad how good this group is, because it's a lot of good football we missed out on. So the tight end position, Greg Olsen, of course, spent some time on injured reserve, did manage to come back. Tyler Eifert, pretty much resident there at the moment, which is a huge shame. Moving on to the offensive line. So at left tackle, we've got Joe Thomas, and probably, and no offense to any of the other players, but probably the biggest disaster of the season, because it broke that incredible record. But at least he broke it by, you know, getting an injury that put him on injured reserve rather than, you know, missing a couple of snaps with a tweak and then coming back on. So if you do it big, I guess. Left guard, we've got Mike Iupati, of course, a very good player. You'll see this entire line is pretty strong, which again is a shame in terms of what we missed out on. Weston Richburg didn't have to move teams. He comes here as well. Then at right guard, we've got Marshall Yanda. Probably still going to be argued by a lot of people to be the best lineman in the NFL. And then at right tackle, we've got Zach Strief. Now, the Saints did a pretty good job of replacing him, but you don't want to lose a guy like that, a team captain as well. And then we move on to the defense. Of course, the number one guy here, one of the biggest losses over the last two seasons, JJ Watt, a guy who pretty much had a monopoly on Defensive Player of the Year, has been missing in action for a couple of seasons now. Let's hope he gets back to full strength soon. At right end, we've got Cliff Averill. So we're going to run for a 3-4 scheme here, although we're the Giants who are a 4-3, but of course we can change that. That's no problem. At defensive tackle, Sharif Floyd. That's one of those guys where you don't know how well he will come back from that. We move on to the left outside linebacker position. JJ Watt's teammate, Whitney Merciless, is starting here, and I just moved down to our other outside linebacker, so let's take a look at him at the right side. Marcus Golden, of course, had no end of sacks last season, then misses out on most of this season, which is a shame. And our middle linebackers, now, Ryan Shazier, of course, didn't go on injured reserve as long, but we know it's a serious injury, and I feel bad for, you know, just quantifying. Actually, I feel terrible for quantifying like that, but of course, I've gone for guys who spent the most time possible, usually. So Jarrell Freeman spent longer than, say, both Dante Hightower and Jordan Hicks. But Ryan Shazier, horrible injury. Hope he can come back from that. And it's a big-time loss, not just for the Steelers, but for the NFL, for football, for fans. It's not nice to see whatsoever. Moving on to the cornerbacks. And again, we had some big losses here at cornerback as well. Richard Sherman headlining that group. Janoris Jenkins spending time on injured reserve as well. Jason Verrett, again, like Tyler Eifert, spends a lot of time here now, and Tavon Young as well rounds that group out. It's a strong group. Free safety, we've gone with Jimmy Ward of the 49ers. Probably a couple of guys you could have looked at as well, but Jimmy Ward, a very good player. And then at strong safety, Eric Berry, another big-time loss. Comeback player of the year just last season, and then, oh no, the season before, sorry. And then ends on injured reserve this season. Of course, it doesn't stop here. We've got special teams as well. Sebastian Janikowski, our kicker, our punter, Sam Martin. And we do have, well, kick returner, again, that's ruining. We've already spoiled our third down running back. It's Darren Sproles, who, of course, will also play kick and punt return for us, and apparently will wear the number 68. And we go to long snapper. We did have a long snapper, but, of course, doesn't let you choose tight ends. So we'll move to the tight end position so we can see him. Carson Tinker will be our long snapper. And that rounds out the team. That is a team exclusively, of course, of players who were on injured reserve this season. But that isn't the main point, just to point out the team. The main point is to see, can this team, you know, go all the way and win a Super Bowl? I'm not going to go week by week. We'll go halfway through the season, take a look, then we'll go to the end of the season, see if we made the playoffs, and of course, we'll then go step by step. So at the halfway point, we are 6-1. That is not, well, we say the halfway point. It's not our halfway point. We've only played 7 games, but we've gone 8 weeks. So let's take a look at the mid-season awards as well. We'll fly through these, of course. So our MVP favorite is Aaron Rodgers. Our coach of the year, of course, is not Ben McAdoo, even at 6-1. Let's take a look at the NFC. Okay, offensive player of the year is Aaron Rodgers. I should mention, of course, that we turned injury off. Defensive player of the year we don't have. Offensive rookie of the year is Dalvin Cook, benefiting from that injury being turned off. The reason I mention that is if we don't see players here, it's not because they're injured, it's because they just haven't played well enough. Best quarterback is Rodgers. Best running back, the first guy we see is Darren Sproles. Then David Johnson's down here, no idea why. We look at the wide receivers, Allen Robinson, Julian Edelman leading. And then I'm surprised we don't see Odell Beckham Jr. there, but he's not there. Joe Thomas, the best offensive lineman. Marshall Yanda not far behind him. Best D-line, again, we're not seeing anything here. The defense apparently not playing too well. Cliff Averill makes it, and that's it. The best linebackers, apparently this defense not pulling its weight, but Ryan Shazier makes it in at number 8 there. And we saw Jordan Hicks as well. Defensive backs. Eric Berry is there at number 3, but the 2 Seahawks players here leading that one, and that's all we've got. Let's take a look at kicker. No, we don't get that one either. Let's move on to the end of the season and see if we make the playoffs. At 6-1, I assume we do. So we don't have anything in the wild card round, and I'm only going to assume that is because we went 15-1. So the injured reserve team goes 15-1, and look at how they've all been playing. Cannot wait to see the actual end of season awards now. We already saw, if you looked at the news, that Aaron Rodgers did win MVP, which is no surprise at 15-1. Through 52 passing touchdowns, 4,996 yards. Not bad going, Rodgers. So he gets MVP. Ben McAdoo wins Coach of the Year. That is just too funny to me. Offensive Player of the Year, of course, is Rodgers. Defensive Player of the Year. I threw my controller in the air and just managed to catch it. That's great to see. Ryan Shazier wins that one. That's nice. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Dalvin Cook, without injury turned on, is able to get that one. Best quarterback, that's no surprise. Best running back, it just didn't work out for David Johnson. Gets stuck at 5th, and Darren Sproles drops to 10th. Wide receiver, Allen Robinson takes that one. Julian Edelman in 3rd. And let's see, no other players there. So no Brandon Marshall, no Odell Beckham Jr. Best O-line, Joe Thomas, then Marshall Yanda. Best D-line, we don't get it. The best we've got is Cliff Averill, and he only dropped from where he was before. Best linebackers, Ryan Shazier is number 3, despite being Defensive Player of the Year, because that makes all the sense. Defensive back, we don't get that, although how do we not get that? We had some great players. Eric Berry's down at 10th, and our kicker, Janikowski, gets number 2. But it's a great turnout here for the injured reserve team. David Johnson actually was 1st in rushing yards in the league, but didn't manage to get best running back. That is a shame. So our first game will be against the Eagles. This will be a big one. Very interesting to see if we're still here for the conference championship round. Let's see how this first week goes for us. And we did get past the Eagles, so we're in the conference game here against the Atlanta Falcons. They went 11-5. Cross your fingers here for a Super Bowl appearance for the all-injured reserve team. So we do get in because we'll be playing the Chargers. You turn injury off and the Chargers make the Super Bowl. That's no surprise. Let's take a look at the Pro Bowl roster. I'll fly through this. You know what the deal is when I do this. If you're interested, you can stop to look. I'm going through quickly. Aaron Rodgers makes it in. David Johnson makes it in. John Kuhn makes it in. Robinson makes it in. Beckham makes it in. Edelman makes it in. We've got a good turnout there. Greg Olsen makes it in at tight end. Thomas and our left guard. Our center, Richburg, is number 2. Yanda's number 1. And our second string right tackle makes it in at number 2. For whatever reason. On the defensive line, JJ Watt doesn't make it in. Right end, we don't get it either, although Cliff Averill wasn't that bad. Look at the linebackers, Defensive Player of the Year. Ryan Shazier doesn't make it in. Let's take a look at the cornerbacks. Again, nothing there. Free safeties. Jimmy Ward does make it in. Eric Berry makes it in. Kicker we don't get. Punter we do. Kick and punt returner we do not get. So here we go. It's the big game. A game that these guys could only dream about this season as they had to work to recover from their injuries. Didn't get to be out there with their teammates fighting to get into the playoffs, fighting to get to the Super Bowl. So let's see if they can make up for all of that here against the Chargers. So here we go. I did not look at the score, so this is going to be as much a surprise to me as it is to you. Let's take a look at the Super Bowl. What was the result? We win 42-17. That is great news. The all-injured reserve team gets the win. They win the Super Bowl. And it just shows you, obviously, you know, it's just a simulation on Madden, but it just shows you the absolute incredible level of quality we missed out on this season with these guys spending time on injured reserve. Some of them spending the entire season there like Julian Edelman. Some of them spending the critical part of the season on there. Aaron Rodgers tried to come back, you know, thought maybe they had a chance, but ended up going back on injured reserve. But they do it. They come back and they win the Super Bowl.